Hello, in this workshop I want to introduce the concepts of genre and moves and then show how those can be used to help you manage your academic writing more effectively, both as a reader and as a writer. So this is a PowerPoint presentation for a relatively long workshop that I teach, but I'm going to do a short version in this video. I have a longer version posted in my course website if you're interested. So the goals are to introduce the concepts of genre and moves, and then to introduce a language tool that you can use to apply these concepts in your own writing and in your own reading. So briefly, genre refers to types of writing. So these can be very broad, like academic writing is a genre, scientific writing is a genre, newspaper writing or magazine writing can be a genre, but within each of those very broad genres, we have more focused genres. So within academic writing, we have things like research articles or research reports, um, literature review papers, and critical literature reviews. You might have lab reports, you might have term papers or dissertations or theses if you're in school. So there are lots of genres. Within each of those genres, there are moves or functions that people do. So, for example, in introductions, it's very common that you provide some background. That's a move. Maybe you tell an interesting story to get your reader's attention. That would be a move or a function within a genre. So we'll look at a few of those today, but only in a limited time. So I'll move through these relatively quickly, but you can pause the video to read them if you'd like. So what I did is I chose 4 writing samples. They are similar topics, but different genres. 2 writing samples are from online news articles about science topics. So they are not research papers, but they are reporting on research papers. The other 2 examples are from actual research reports. So they are all from the very beginning of the article, so that they all fit a similar set of expectations in the introduction. So here's the first sample, and instead of teaching this like I would in a class, I'll let you pause the video if you want to read this, but the answer is this is from a news article, a report for the general public about research. How do we know that? Well, let's look at some of these moves. So I've analyzed the text. You can pause the video if you'd like to go into more detail, but some of the features that we can notice include the title, the pronouns, which are second person pronouns talking to an individual reader, addressing them directly as you. Lots of narrative description, so it's telling a story. And then we could look at the ways that the writer refers to research. Again, there's this background and narrative story going on. And then we could also identify the verbs as referring to discussion. So verbs like says, there are a lot of action verbs. If we compare that to an academic article, so this is the introduction from an academic article. So again, we could look at the title. The title's much longer, it's more formal, it provides a lot of information, it's not very entertaining. The pronouns are different. There are no second person pronouns, you. The ways that the writers in this refer to research are more formal and more standard. There's particular types of signposting language, so phrases like in particular, however, in the present paper. These are moves or functional language that signal to the reader how to move logically through this discussion. And I like to use this as an example because this is an article about cute things, but it's actually a very formal academic paper. Here's the second example from a news article. And so we could look at some of the same features, the titles, the pronouns, the use of narrative descriptions, the less formal, more detailed way of referring to research and researchers, and then we could look at the verbs. They're often action verbs, a little more descriptive and informal than we might see in sample 4, which is another research paper. And here's sample 4 analyzed for some of the same features. Okay, so what's the point? Academic writing is full of conventions. Conventions are kind of invisible expectations or rules that groups of people have. So academic readers and writers, researchers, scientists, students share a lot of conventions. And so we need to be able to find those. And that's what we're doing here when we look at things like the titles, the pronouns, the type of description, whether it's subjective, very personal, or whether it's more objective. The ways of referring to research and researchers, the use of signposting language, transitions like thus, however, nevertheless, the types of verbs that we use. That could be the words or whether it's active or passive voice. So what we want to do is figure out how to use them. And so what we've been doing partly is genre analysis, which is identifying a genre, in this case, research articles and news reports on research, and then look within those papers, in this case it's papers, and identify the moves. So moves are just communicative structures that serve a particular function. All right, so they're written with the goal of communicating to the audience efficiently and clearly. These are often accomplished in what we might call phrases. And so someone came up with the idea of phraseology, kind of the study of phrases or chunks of language. So chunk is like a chunk of bread. It's an informal way of measuring something. It's more than one, but it's not a large number. So it's this unit of language, somewhere between a word and a phrase. It's not usually as large as a sentence. So this type of phraseology, or whatever you call it, this use of conventional chunks of language is very helpful to learn about, because you can see this type of language use whenever you're reading, and then you can learn to use it in your own writing. So one of my favorite ways to learn this is a website called the Academic Phrase Bank. And you could find this just by searching Academic Phrase Bank. They do sell a book, as you notice here. You can download a PDF version for a few pounds or a few dollars. But the website I find is quite useful. So at the top, I've put a red circle around some of the key genre features. And this website, it is for academic writing. It's focusing on one of the most common academic genres, which is the research report. And the research report can be called different things, a research article. It's basically the same structure as many theses or dissertations. So these are parts of this genre, or this type of academic writing. And then on the left, we have some language functions, or what we might call moves. So what are the things we might do within this type of paper? So it's useful to separate these because they move from, I think, more larger, more abstract units to smaller, more manageable units. And that gets us all the way down to the phrases. So the way it's organized is you would identify, so here we have being critical. That's a language function. Being critical can happen, and I guess technically it could happen in any of these areas of the paper, of this genre of academic writing, the research report. But normally being critical would happen either in your introduction, in your reference to sources, or possibly in your discussion of findings or your conclusion. We normally wouldn't see being critical in your methodology or your results. That's not, it's not one of the expectations of the genre. So if we want to see how to actually be critical, so we have this idea, oh, I need to criticize either my own findings or someone else's findings, then we could go in this case, you would just click on that, and you can look down and see that there are lots of, you might call normal or common or acceptable existing phrases. And so phrases are and sentence parts, so clauses. So it's basically, this is why it's often called chunks. These groups of language that can be as short as a few words to almost a complete sentence. So this is one example, but there are many, many different phrases for each move. Okay, so I will stop this short version of the presentation here so we can reach under 10 minutes, but I encourage you to visit this website, the Academic Phrase Bank, and to explore the moves and the phrases that are common or that are typical of this genre of academic writing, the research report. Thanks and good luck.